So hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. Now today I want to talk about Mr. Beast. Now I'm not going to talk about Mr. Beast in like a exposed drama kind of way, like, oh, the allegation about the situation, about the allegations. Like, no. This is not what this channel is. But I just think Mr. Beast is the perfect example of sometimes people do really good things for really bad reasons. So that idea, that rhetoric is what I want to build this villainous character study around. So I just want to talk about a few tropes that we see around villainous characters and how we can change them and make them better, make these characters more well understood, like deeper villainous characters. So number one has got to be show your villains having a good time. Show your villains in a very relaxed environment. I really dislike how, like, when there's like a shadowy evil figure, a shadowy evil, like, cabal or whatever, they're always like, with hoods in a dark room talking about how evil they are and how mean they are and like all whatever, we're gonna conquer the world, right? Sulking, being emo brats. Like, I think a lot of more villains would be scary if you could see them just popping bottles, chilling out, smoking a cigar while, the heroes, the protagonists are camping in the woods somewhere, struggling just to survive, trying to not get hunted down by their henchmen and stuff like that. I feel like that juxtaposition would make your villain all the more intimidating and help you understand them more in a more relaxed context. So to give a specific example, I'm going to talk about the Phantom trope from Hunter x Hunter. So when I watched that show, I thought those villains were really cool. This sort of like very violent Robin Hood kind of characters, and it showed them being from a really like poor environment in a bad area and all that stuff, like the middle of the desert. And I thought that was cool because it was trying to make them like sympathetic, I guess. And they just chilled out in a warehouse, and I was like, wait, why? Like, why would you kill so many people? Like I thought they were either gonna like show them living in the warehouse, but show that they like give the wealth back and whatever, and or like trying to like give back to where they came from and like other similar places like that. That actually would have been kind of noble and maybe put me on their side. But no, they just hoarded wealth and stayed in the warehouse. I would have preferred the Phantom trope if it showed them like balling out, just being like, doing exactly what they criticize the rich for doing, enjoying fancy wines and enjoying fancy food and all that stuff. That would have made them good villains because like they're evil and they're hypocritical, but you can see where like that would have made them much more complex. But instead, they just hoarded wealth and stayed in a warehouse. They seem like losers. Like that sucked. I hated that. So I think showing that the damage that this person is doing is at least being enjoyed by them, is being indulged in by them, would make a much better villain than just someone who sulks around in a dark corner talking about how they're gonna rule the world one day. That's a childish villain. So number two has got to be show that working with this villain, being friends with them, or at least cooperating with them, can be to your benefit, can be understandable, even if you don't like it, even if you don't want to be there, even if you don't want to help them, that there's something to gain. I think there would be something to showing the bribes that people are receiving, the gifts that they're getting, the favors that they're getting out of this villain, because it makes more sense. Like, it makes sense how they could corrupt someone. It makes sense why, yes, they are the villain and you don't want to root for them, but you can totally see why a good character, a protagonist, may actually align with them. I think it would be worth seeing the fruits of the evil labor that people do for this villain. See them enjoying the house that they got, that car that they got, because maybe they might feel conflicted about it. Maybe they might feel some remorse at some point, but you can see why they did it. You can see how they were corrupted, and that they were what's the word? I guess seduced, maybe. So next up has got to be the presentation of your villain. All right, most villains, most truly bad people, are not gonna scream from the hilltops about how evil and sadistic they are, and how that they're gonna rule the world, and that everyone should feel their wrath and be afraid of them. Alright, that is a child that wants attention, not a villain. In reality, anonymity is a friend of villainy. But in this scenario, that fame and reputation can add to this villain's power and their influence, then of course they're going to want the people that know about them to think they're a good guy. They're probably going to be very obsessed with their image as a good person because they know they're not. But they don't really care about that. They just want people to think they're good. So if you're going to write a villain, I think having a villain that is really obsessed with their self-image is a great character trait to have. It's great to feed into their ego that way, because it would be cool to show of like how far a villain is willing to go just to protect their reputation, to protect their image. And I think a villain that is calculated and has a little bit of sense in their head is going to be invested in a positive image, to be thought of as the hero. A villain will likely try to frame their actions as beneficial, or try to portray the protagonist, their antagonist, as negative, as detractors, as evil. So villains like Darth Vader, like Voldemort, like the Sith, all that Dark Lord, whatever, Dark Side or whatever, like I just don't really connect to villains like that, because they're not even trying to hide. They're not even pretending that they're the good ones. So I really just think presentation and being seen as a good person should be really important to your villain in one way or another. So next up, we got subordinates and allies. Now, Mr. Beast is definitely on par with this kind of cartoonish villain that treats their subordinates like shit, like they could die and replace them, they wouldn't even care. Now, I think this is a little bit cheap and lazy, but it makes sense that they would not care to an extent about people that work for them, that people that work under them, the paper pushers, you know, the code monkey, the camera guy, the editor, like totally, it would make sense that they would treat people that they don't need like shit. But I think a better villain would actually have some very amicable friendships, some very amicable alliances and partnerships. And I think a good villain would actually go to great lengths to protect these relationships and protect these friendships until it does not serve them anymore. And then they would kick them to the curb. I think that would be the natural progression of a villain, right? To see the extent that they're willing to go to protect people that are on their side. I think we've all kind of met someone or have heard of someone where it's like, I am glad they're on our side, because if they weren't, they'd be terrifying. They'd be a terrifying evil to deal with. So that kind of character that is willing to do anything to protect their own is a good villain. But I think it makes them an even better villain, where the second that this relationship does not serve them anymore, they're willing to just cut them off, kill them, exile them, whatever. I think that would go a long way to show you how little empathy and emotion that villain has, but how calculated their decision making was when it came to these friendships and these relationships. And lastly, your villain needs to have people that support them. And like we talked about, there's going to be people that support them because they have something to gain, because they directly got something. They directly got a favor for helping out that villain, for working with that villain. But then there's going to be a few people that support them for maybe more complicated reasons. Now, some may support them out of fear. And that's a little bit simplistic of a reasoning, of a rationale, but that doesn't mean it's ineffective. I think the consequences of what your villain could do, good or bad, should be much more influential and should kind of get your mind moving more so than what they actually do. It's what they could do that you either really want or deathly afraid of. And what they actually do is kind of, it's part of the subtext. It's the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. I guess I kind of lied. I am going to talk about this in a drama sort of focused way, but it just really blew my mind how many YouTubers and whatever, people that had interacted with Mr. Beast were saying like, oh yeah, I met him and he was such like a super chill, down to earth guy. And it's like, yeah, of course he was a super chill, down to earth guy, because like you have 1 million followers or 1 million subscribers or whatever. Like, it's not hard to be nice to people if you can gain something from it. Like, of course he's going to be nice and cordial with other YouTubers. Like, why would he be a dick to them? Like, that would sully his reputation, or at least not help it. Like, that's so nice. Like, get with the program, guys. Like, what are you talking about? So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. That's about all I have for you today, but I really just want to take a real life example for this character study, because I think someone who is real, has flaws, has ego, has a good side, has a bad side, has good days, has bad days, is a much better example for writing fiction than actual fiction, if that makes sense. I hope you guys are following along. Also, Mr. Beast is kind of in the headlines right now, and I want to siphon off some clout from that situation. So subscribe if you like this. Maybe I'll do more examples like this kind of video. Anyway, have a good one, guys.